Winch to safety, the moment these fishermen were lucky to see.
We went over to investigate and found this sort of upturned fishing boat with 5 guys clinging onto it. 4 of them sort of hanging on at the back of the boat and 1 guy hanging on at the bow.
The 5-metre vessel proved no match for the rough 3-metre swell off Port Stephens. It overturned at around 4:30 in the afternoon, throwing the 5 men from Melbourne into the water and turning their fishing trip into a disaster, but thankfully not a tragedy. The group was spotted by rescuers just over 2 hours later.
They were very lucky really, because with such a small object to try and find with a little bit of sea running, and so I think that probably it might have taken us up to another half an hour or an hour had we not just been fortuitous and spotted them.
The rescue took place around 30 nautical miles out to sea off the coast here at Port Stephens. Battling rough conditions, the Westpac rescue helicopter winched 4 men to safety, while an RAAF chopper was called in to save the last fisherman. And it seems just in the nick of time.
Judging by the condition when we saw these guys and when we hoisted them into the aircraft, 1 or 2 of them were looking a little bit sort of frazzled, to say the least, and probably had difficulty just swimming to the rescue crewmen, only 3 or 4 metres.
They were taken to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital and released a short time later. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Paraded by government MPs.
There will be the toughest standards required in the land, in the entire nation, before any mineral development activity can be approved.
Refuted by those they represent.
We were looking for land use security. We don't have that now.
The draft Strategic Regional Land Use Plan identifies parts of the Hunter as critical to agriculture. Any mining application within 2 kilometres of that land would be assessed by an independent panel, which would decide whether the proposal would harm existing industries or the environment.
If a proposed mining activity cannot tick both of those boxes, that is, no harm to the land, no harm to the water, it will simply not proceed.
The plan aims to protect agriculturally significant land, but in the end it may be money which proves to be more significant, as some mining proposals could bypass the gateway process altogether if they're deemed of exceptional value to the state.
We had been promised before the last election that the wine industry and wine-related tourism would be protected. This draft paper that's come out doesn't give us that protection.
This delivers the election commitment that we made. There will be most forms of mining activity not possible in relation to prime agricultural lands or those critical industry clusters that we identify.
The protections are not there. The government has reneged on its promise.
It needs to be redone. I mean, it's not going to protect anybody.
Many locals also fear mining will turn tourists away.
Tourism is the original sustainable industry.
But according to some, every decision comes at a cost.
Unless we have a viable gas supply system in New South Wales, we will be stuck with a shortage of supply, and we will be forced to import heavily from Western Australia at world parity prices.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
At least one group has been sickened by what it's seen. The federal government's white paper is still in the planning stages. Eventually, it'll guide our future electricity needs.
They've brought it to Newcastle for public consultation, and we just want to help them let the public know how dirty it is.
Just a handful of people today heard that coal and gas will supply most of our energy come 2050, and our gas reserves have the most potential. But at the moment, they're a work in progress. To get it right, the federal government is telling us it needs to spend $240 billion in 23 years. And when it comes to money, this is the coal company's latest environmental splash: sprinklers to eliminate dust. Port Waratah Coal Services is putting some of the money it earns from the new black gold into greener measures. 6 dust monitors have been installed at its coal loader, and all going to plan, there'll be more at its proposed $4.5 billion 4th terminal. The environmental assessment of the project is due to be released soon, and the company today told the media it'll spend $200 million on getting rid of dust.
The community is concerned about the dust, and another terminal has the perception of contributing dust to the community.
Nat Wallace, NBN News. Ahead of the local government elections, the Lord Mayor has a spring in his step.
It's the brightest star on the horizon for Newcastle at the moment. Last
night, he brokered a deal to sell some of the city's vacant land to the University of Newcastle. The price tag, $4 million. Report after report described this as even more important than the train line in terms of getting the city moving again. The uni already has a presence in the CBD, but now it wants more. Last year, it unveiled plans to relocate 3,500 students to Honeysuckle. Today, it wasn't commenting on its intentions for its newest acquisition. The university's got the land and now it needs the money. The state government has chipped in. No word yet on whether the federal government will do the same. The local federal member is reportedly trying to get the green light for close to $25 million. And when it comes to saviours, the organisers of Newcastle's oldest festival, Matara, are pleading for help.
Why would anybody want to take it away from the community? It's the community's festival, people. It's time to fight. A council plan to give the festival $10,000 for the event on the condition it's held in January was last night put on hold. Last year, it was offered $40,000, and those who know Matara best say it'll struggle to survive. Nat Wallace, NBN News.
This was Jacob Pepper against Melbourne Victory on Saturday night.
I don't even really remember it, It just went in, and from there, you know, as you can see on the replay, my face is just pretty surprised. So, and then all the boys, you know, come over, and you know, it was a good feeling.
No wonder his first A-League goal is now a blur. The 19-year-old struck another minutes later. All that hard work on the training paddock seems to be paying off. Today he earned a call-up to the Olyroos.
So hopefully he can keep on going. We've got a good bunch of boys here who ensure that he keeps his feet on the ground.
The local product agrees and says first focus is Friday night's home game against the Gold Coast.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's good to look forward to. You know, I've been working hard on the training pitch this week, not letting it get to my head, and hopefully I can go into this week's game with a lot of confidence and, you know, maybe produce another one.
It's a match that's prompted a warning from Jets coach Gary Van Egmond, especially after the cellar dwellers came close to drawing level with Wellington on the weekend.
They're a team that's coming here with no pressure. They're a young team, and that makes them unpredictable and that makes them highly dangerous.
After a brief appearance against the Victory, star striker Jeremy Brockie could see more game time. Midfielder Ruben Zadkovic is suspended. Taylor Regan is a possible replacement, while 2 more days of this weather could suit Newcastle.
On that side of it, the ball circulation should be nice and crisp.
Kevin Mettam, NBN News. Last year, 19-year-old Hawaiian Carissa Moore became the youngest ever World Tour champion, and she's still wasting no time, already in Newcastle ahead of her Surfest debut next week.
I had time off from the tour, and I know it would be great to, touch up on my competing skills with all the other girls, so it'll be a lot of fun.
The conditions weren't so enjoyable at Merriweather Beach today, but local Philippa Anderson isn't worried.
Being surfers, we travel a lot and go to a whole different places, and I'm really familiar here. I mean, I surf every day, so I'm stoked to just get it underway.
The Central Coast's Russell Maloney was just as keen to collect an 8th Indigenous Classic crown this afternoon, but this final didn't go his way. Foster's Joe Haddon found his groove, and it was particularly sweet after 7 frustrating years.
I just got maybe one better wave. That's all it was, for sure.
You don't say that to him though, do you?
Nah.
He even pulled out this move right at the death.
It is a really good feeling. It is, because just the being Indigenous and I'm extremely proud. So I know my mum and my family will be happy.
Fellow Foster product Kate Rains was too good in the women's, while everyone was happy to be part of a growing event on the Indigenous sporting calendar. Kevin Messam, NBN News.
A Boeing 747 isn't something you see every day at Williamtown. It was forced to land at the RAF base at 8:30 this morning. Newcastle Airport already too busy, having to cater for 3 other planes also diverted from Sydney. The 220 international passengers had to stay on board for 3 hours while the weather cleared down south. The jumbo was refuelled and finally cleared for takeoff, still in less than ideal conditions, just after 11:30. There was a less than smooth trip for cruise passengers as well, with the Pacific Sun contending with rough seas as it came through the heads at Newcastle this morning. For some, the 2-metre swell delivered a welcome ride. Meanwhile, a truck driver has somehow escaped injury after crashing off a bridge into a creek on the Pacific Highway at Karua at 3:30 a.m. Police believe the 61-year-old fell asleep at the wheel. Authorities work to contain the truck's contents, cleaning products including bleach.
We've got booms in place, we've got firefighters downstream, so that if any of the product does get into the stream, we can collect it and stop it from going any further.
The B-double had to be dismantled as part of the difficult salvage operation, which took more than 12 hours. Northbound traffic had to be diverted through the town.
As you can imagine, that's a pretty big operation. It's a big truck.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
He's had his fair share of critics over the years. No surprise then, Jared Mullen avoided the pre-season media spotlight.
Mainly concentrating with football. I think every pre-season there's been a big hype about, Mullen's doing this and Mullen's got to step up and stuff like that. So I just wanted to concentrate on my own game.
The halfback says he's never felt stronger after gaining 5 kilos in the off-season, which should help his defence. His running game has also stepped up a gear under new coach Wayne Bennett.
Obviously, I've got to get my hands on the ball a lot more. Wayne's been in me a bit about getting more involved, and I had to feel my way into the game a bit. But I'd rather, I'd trade that try for a win, that's for sure.
The true test awaits on Sunday against Sharks half Todd Carney.
It's always a good challenge playing against Mallow. He's playing some good football. His trial form was good, and he was good again the other night. I thought he brought him back into the game.
The last time the two sides met was a trial, and Newcastle won that by 4, but Cronulla isn't phased.
While they put an effort in, it's nothing like an NRL game in competitions.
The Knights have been working on a more disciplined defensive line ahead of the trip to the Shire as they chase 4 consecutive wins over the Sharks. Kevin Mettam, NBN News.
Today is just like one of the reasons we come in Australia for.
The Hunter is in line to experience the largest population increase in the state, but when it comes to housing, it seems it just doesn't have enough.
There is a shortage, there's no doubt about that.
The Property Council today released the findings of an independent review into the former Labor government's Hunter Regional Strategy. It recommends the state government act now or face a massive housing shortage. The council suggests planning for 160,000 more Hunter residents and 115,000 new homes over the next 25 years.
That will require a lot of cooperation and coordination between the agencies and the industry itself. It has to be tied to the market, and importantly, it has to be tied to infrastructure funding.
Minister for the Hunter, Mike Gallagher, wasn't prepared to talk about the problem today. The member for Maitland, however, says there's no hiding from her city's predicted 70% population increase in the next 20 years.
We are projected to grow massively, and so from the New South Wales Government's perspective, we've got to make sure that we've got the planning in place, the infrastructure in place to manage that growth. And that's clearly what the Hunter Infrastructure Fund is charged with, making a plan for the next 20 years so we can manage the growth.
Its role is increasing, and that comes off the back of the mining industry. Its proximity to a global city is important in terms of going forward. So I think it's just a start of something enormously big for the Hunter.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Treasurer Mike Baird met with the member for Swansea today to talk dollars and cents.
We've got to try and get as much as we can, life-wise, out of the current bridges. Otherwise, it's just wasting money.
The bridge was a traffic stopper in 2006 when a bizarre gas build-up forced its closure. Since then, she's been stuck, started to sink, and it was feared she was past her prime. But according to Gary Edwards, there's plenty of life left in her yet.
The bridge is actually working quite well. It's probably working now better than it has in years.
Mike Baird stepped up his commitment to the Hunter, promising to put a new bridge on the state's agenda.
You cannot have a 20-year infrastructure plan for the state without including a project such as this.
However, the government tips the current span will last another 15 to 20 years.
It'll be up to the community to what the community wants. So does the community want a bridge? Does the community want a tunnel? How much are they prepared to pay for whatever it is they decide that they want?
But it's a bridge over troubled water. With government-funded dredging before Christmas, only a stopgap measure for the congested channel.
There's doubt as to whether the current dredging work that's being done will last right through the coming summer.
There's a report that's looking at that as we speak, which will be released. Well, I think the details are coming in the next week or so, and that's part of the consideration in terms of the long-term solution.
Kath Landers, NBN News. It was a gift from above. An old wool shed at Wickham fell into the hands of liquidators and was leased to local artists at a very affordable rate. The tenants spent months transforming the soiled space into studios for almost 30 artists. But a complaint that the building was being used for commercial and residential purposes sent council knocking.
There is only studio spaces in here.
The complaint wasn't substantiated, but inspectors found another fault and ordered the artists out.
The reason that council have issued this order is that the owner of the building hasn't obtained the relevant development consent that's required.
Council files have the building still listed as a wool shed.
The longest tenant has been here for 4 years.
The investigation of the building revealed that there were significant fire safety issues, and those issues were identified posed a significant risk to any occupants of the building.
It's unclear what the corporate owner has planned for its future.
We're basically playing a waiting game until we find out, firstly, the time frame of the work that needs to be carried out.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
A new beginning for the Hunter Valley Research Foundation. Work now ready to begin on a major upgrade.
All of the research staff and interviewing staff are included in the one building. It'll have two floors to it. It'll also house our library and facilities that the community will also be able to use.
The project will cost around $1 million, $700,000 of that being federal money. But while the Gillard government's coffers are open, there have been concerns the state government's funds are drying up. It's just cut its annual $150,000 grant.
The New South Wales government has had a long-standing relationship with HVRF and will continue to do so.
The O'Farrell government says it's still funding the foundation, just on a project-by-project basis.
Look, basically what we're doing is changing the funding model from a block funding model to fee-for-service, and that's in line with best practice.
I have confidence that the state members will understand the resource that they have, how valuable this is, and will go into bat for the funding. I'm very optimistic that that will occur.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
John Mazzara fronted Newcastle's racing fraternity for the first time as Racing New South Wales chairman, the owner of Arrowfield Stud, making a commitment to the region and dismissing claims his appointment is a conflict of interest.
The question of conflicts doesn't arise because we have a very strict protocol at Racing New South Wales on the board.
And after listening to industry members, his message is clear.
Country racing is poorly treated at the moment, has been sort of left behind.
Owners say they need a horse to win at least 3 times to break even. Trainers are also calling for more prize money and resources.
I'll be hopeful that there were some good outcomes out of this meeting this morning.
The first thing that was the positive was the fact that they were here.
A $120 million Racing New South Wales court case against 2 corporate bookmakers is expected to be resolved this month. If the sporting body wins, that money would go back to country racing.
One of the first things we will be doing is investing in new technology in tracks.
And the NJC is hoping for a large chunk.
Well, it's hard to estimate what these sort of costs are, but I'll tell you what, you could do a tremendous amount of things here with $10 million.
It's also fighting to keep all of its Saturday meetings. Kevin Mettam, NBN News. The sun rose over a picture-perfect setting for Surfest, Merewether Beach finally enjoying a clear sky following 2 days of rain, and while some preferred a relaxed start, the 2-metre swell meant anything but. It was Matt Banting taking advantage in the opening heat, cruising into the round of 32. This after taking out both main events at the Australian Open at Manly last month.
I think just to be here at the competition, get the first one out of the way is always a good feeling, and just take it heat by heat from now and hopefully be in the final at the end of the week.
But the internationals soon stole the spotlight. Portugal's Vasco Ribeiro made the cut, while this Brazilian junior had the crowd in awe. Felipe Toledo sending out a warning to his rivals with an aerial 360. There were no shortage of barrels either, with top honours going to Cronulla's Shane Campbell. Fans were staying put and all eyes were on the water as Gold Coast rising star Noah Dean put on a real show. Inner Bay's Curtis Herman was the last of the Newcastle contingent to bow out.
I'm so stoked that we got to surf these waves for the competition, and we scored it really well for Surfest, so it's good.
The women's event also continues tomorrow with Eden Putland, one of the favourites. Kevin Mettam, NBN News.
4Jack's ships come in with news the manufacturer's been awarded additional work in the $8 billion air warfare destroyer project.
4Jacks have gained almost half of this project.
It's a massive coup for the company, which is now seeking to increase its workforce at a time when manufacturing has taken a hit in the Hunter.
The market climate is very poor for aluminium at the moment, but in the Hunter we actually gained 4,000 additional jobs in manufacturing last year.
It's been smooth sailing at 4Jacks, with all work rolling off the production line on time and on budget. But trouble's been brewing down south at a Melbourne-based shipping company. A bungled job on the first of the 3 destroyers sent sparks flying between the company and the government.
BAE's shipbuilding in Williamstown in Melbourne has found this contract fairly difficult.
Good news for 4Jacks.
I guess for us, BAE's inability, with other contracts impinging on their work to deliver to the standards required, 4Jacks have been the winner.
BAE declined to comment today, but is reportedly angry about the government's decision to send work it was banking on offshore. The government claims that work was better suited to expertise overseas.
The ones that have gone to Spain are the more technical ones, and we don't want to delay this project. This project's already 12 months over time.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
Gold Coast United's former owner Clive Palmer spared no expense to promote his new message prior to kick-off. On the pitch, the visitors jumped out of the blocks quickly. Gold Coast had never earned a point in Newcastle. Pretty soon they were in the driver's seat. Minutes later, the cellar dwellers should have gone further in front. Sensing the need for change, Gary Van Egmond swapped Jeremy Brockie for Ben Kantorowski. But the Jets' momentum stalled again in the second half, with defensive errors piling up. With their place in the top 6 hanging by a thread, Newcastle found a way to steal a point. With just 2 games left in the regular season, 3 points against the Raw next week will be vital.
Everyone knows that that won't be an easy game, and this might be the kick in the backside that everyone needs prior to a game like Brisbane.
When it comes to upsetting ratepayers, it seems council's gone to new depths with the O'Mealys. Potholes out the front of this YE home were filled with dirt on Friday after NBN got involved. But this family wants a permanent solution to a problem that's plagued them for 5 years.
A joke, an absolute joke.
A car came around there to come into the property and the front of it went straight down, had to be hitched up to get back out again.
The O'Mealys are caught in the middle of two councils.
You know, one's blaming the other one's blaming the other one.
On this side of the road, I'm in the Wyong LGA, and on this side, I'm in Lake Macquarie. But to get rid of the confusion about who fixes what, the councils have an agreement to split the road at the bridge.
I'm not sure exactly what the agreement is. We haven't cited any kind of agreement, so we pay our rates to Lake Macquarie and we expect Lake Macquarie to sort it out.
But seemingly, because Wyong isn't getting the cash, it wants no part of what will be an expensive bit of patchwork.
Do I pay my rates to Wyong Council then? Maybe I should. I don't know. I'm at wit's end about it.
The confusion has renewed a push for Lake Macquarie to revisit and change its boundaries. Some on the Central Coast see it as a cash grab, others common sense.
If you live in Lake Macquarie and you pay rates in Lake Macquarie, you should be able to get your roads fixed by the Lake Macquarie Council.
Oh, I'm refusing to pay rates. They've done nothing. Until this gets fixed, I'll go to court. There is no rates getting paid on this property.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
With Matt Banting knocked out in the quarters of the Boys Pro Junior, Jordan Watson was left to fly the Aussie flag in the semi-finals. His run ended when he locked horns with the laid-back Brazilian Jesse Mendes. In the final, a tree made for an interesting roadblock. As for the surfers, Mendes made a slow start, but a late 8.15 was enough to clinch the win. The Brazilian believes his relaxed, carefree attitude was the key to victory.
I came down, I wasn't even going to do this contest, and all my friends were doing it, and I was at the Gold Coast. And I was like, oh, might as well, I'm going to be there by myself, just come down, and warm up for the next week. And worked out good.
In the Girls Pro Junior, Crescent Head's Ellie Jean Coffey qualified for the final after earlier knocking out local girl Philippa Anderson in the quarters. South Africa's Bianca Buitendark impressed plenty of spectators on her way to the decider. In the end, 2 8-point rides proved to be enough to claim her first win in Australia.
I finished school last year, and this year is my first year just full-time surfing, and I'm loving it so far.
At the moment, our lifestyle goes hand in hand with one of our biggest economic drivers. But with Newcastle Port the fastest growing in the world, how much longer will we be comfortable neighbours? Not long, according to some.
2012, I think they've got to all pull up their socks and let us be involved at the planning stage, not in the cop it sweet stage.
And it seems the federal government agrees. Today officials heard about a new 50-year ports plan awaiting state government approval.
For Newcastle, it's just, again, let's get our act together. Let's make sure this works in harmony between the port and the city.
I think we probably could do more.
Currently, there's no plan. Existing infrastructure asked to cope with the coal rush, a fourth loader is on the way, with it more environmental concerns, and a $600 million container terminal is also waiting approval. It would add 60 trucks a day to Industrial Drive.
So we need to move from the piecemeal fashion.
But some argue at the moment we have no choice.
There's a market in Newcastle that wants to do their business through Newcastle, and that's what's driving us to ensure that we're able to service the customers. That's what makes sustainable business, not just a wish list.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
After 12 months of late nights in the studio, Julie Squires' life-size sculpture of St Mary of the Cross was finally lowered into place on International Women's Day.
It was a long process, and I'm really pleased that it's completed.
Its new home, Melbourne's General Cemetery, where it will stand outside the mausoleum named in the saint's honour. The public's only had a sneak peek at the statue. It'll be officially unveiled next month when it's blessed by the Archbishop of Melbourne.
It's still sort of under wraps, but I'm sure so far the people who've seen it really like it.
Ms Squires rates the traditional piece as among the most challenging but satisfying of her 20-year career.
It's my first religious piece, and I was actually educated in Merewether at St Joseph's High School, so I had already had a link there.
The statue is her 20th public art project. Others include Destiny at Dyke Point and the Bicentenary Commission at Nobby's Breakwall. Work took the artist to Melbourne for a decade, but she's recently returned home to Newcastle, where she's completed the Surffest trophies.
I really just want to enjoy Newcastle again and get my ground roots back up here. So we'll see. I've got a few projects in the pipeline.
As for what they are, well, that'll stay under wraps for now. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
The contest lived up to the hype, and Novocastrians came out in their thousands to watch. NBN threw huge resources at the coverage, with multiple cameras covering every possible angle. Nat Jeffrey called the action, while reporters on the beach interviewed the surfers. But one thing they couldn't control was the weather, and 2 days of southerly gales hit during the heats. When the weather improved, the competitors got down to business. Tomorrow night, the Surffest 85 controversy that still gets talked about today, and we relive the men's and women's finals.
At 43, Luke Egan only takes part in 2 events each year. Competing at his boyhood break is always a priority. Taj Burrow is back for a shot at redemption after an interference call saw him crash out of Surfest in the quarters last year. The two will go head-to-head in the round of 96.
I might have to sit next to him with his local knowledge, maybe split a few peaks with him. I don't know, but yeah, Luke's going to be hard to beat.
If it was 8 to 10 foot Merriweather, I think he'd be following me around like a rash. But I don't think it's going to be that big, but there'll be a few ways around. And look, Taj has just come off a win at the Quicksilver Pro, and he surfed so well up there. It was amazing. So I think I'll be learning a few tips off him.
Joel Parkinson hasn't competed at Surfest since 2001. With the event elevated to a 6-star rating, he figured it was time to take another shot at the Mark Richards Trophy.
He's the king of Australian surfing, so I think it's a huge honour to come to Newcastle and surf here at his local beach.
Carissa Moore will look to keep the women's title in Hawaiian hands. She's out to put an average result in the Gold Coast season opener behind her and forget about the pressure of being world champion.
I definitely might have let it get to me a little bit on the Gold Coast, and it's a lot, but I'm looking forward to having fun, and I just love surfing, and so if I just focus on that, I think that's when things start to fall into place for me.
In contrast, Sally Fitzgibbons has been a regular visitor to Newcastle. Having fallen short on the Gold Coast, she knows it's not going to be any easier at the Merriweather 6-star contest.
They're so competitive, and if not more competitive than World Tour events at times, because you don't have that man-on-man priority situation until the quarterfinals. So it's a lot of hunger going on. Everyone wants to win.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. While Kurt Gidley made his way to Cardiff for the all-important checkup, his teammates were leaving their recovery session with the captain clearly in their thoughts.
Obviously pretty disappointed, I think, so early in the season too, and it's one of those things until you get the scan you don't really know whether it's just season or whether it's just a couple of weeks, so we're all sort of feeling for Kurt at the moment, and hopefully it's good news today.
With Ryan Stigg and Tyrone Roberts still unavailable, only Wayne Bennett knows who Gidley's replacement might be.
At the moment, we'll probably find out tomorrow what sort of Wayne's thinking, but whoever we put in there, I'm sure will do a job. And Matt Hilder did a great job there covering yesterday.
James McManus took a heavy knock in the second half, but he'll be fine to face the Broncos.
I couldn't breathe for a couple of minutes there, and Junior grabbed the ball and took off, so it just left me there to die. But it's good that we were so resilient in the game and able to hold them off.
The Knights believe the win over the Sharks proves all isn't lost without Gidley.
We just kept hanging in. Just wouldn't defensively we had our moments, but overall our defence saved the day for us. It was outstanding, particularly our try line defence.
That's just tremendous effort. Like I said, the boys kept turning up, and
It was a tough grind, so the season's off and running, and I never thought I'd sing that song again. So that was good to belt that one out.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Agent commissions can be anywhere between 2 to 10% of a property's sale price. Founder of Property Now, Andrew Blackett, says he wanted to give people a way out.
The choice that we've been giving for 6 years is to have another way of selling that doesn't involve remotely the cost.
His company takes sellers through the process for a flat fee.
You can save yourself a bit of money and shift your property rather than having to make that extra bit for the real estate agent.
Kathy Kelly sold her home through Property Now, saving a $10,000 commission fee.
You had direct feedback, so you knew. And people would say, look, we're not interested. And you'd go, fine. Where the real estate agent might say, oh, they say they're not interested, but I think they really are.
The company advertises all its clients on realestate.com.au and Domain, but this month Domain upped its costs for Property Now, charging it for each listing.
Suddenly overnight, Domain, i.e. Fairfax, have sought to put a 3,000% increase on our business.
Domain has declined to comment on the move.
But I view it as a completely anti-competitive behaviour, probably the worst in Australian history, and it's been done selectively to property now.
But those in the industry warn independent sellers might miss out on getting top dollar because experts have the edge when it comes to attracting and negotiating with buyers.
We've got the buyers around already because we're marketing in our core areas all the time.
Kath Landers, NBN News.
It's sacred ground to many, a place to honour those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
It's a nice place to be able to pay homage to people that we can't visit as other people might visit a cemetery.
From rich beginnings in 1961, it seems funding for the Civic Park Memorial Grove has stopped flowing.
It's been let go for a long time, and I think, unfortunately, there's been no money spent on this place at all.
Its history all but forgotten.
In this memorial grave is the first Vietnam Veterans War memorial in Australia.
But now it's ready to be rediscovered.
The community generally would like to see this made back into an attractive and welcoming area and befitting the tradition that it preserves.
A dedicated group of Novocastrians is working with council to help cement the memorial's place in history.
The initial phase is an initial spruce up and clean up and getting some of the things repaired, like the fountain behind us. But in the long run, I think some concrete plans will come out of the process.
Oh, it means everything. You know, you just get a bit emotional when you talk about places like this because there are some very well-known people in here. You know, there's people's ashes in here. There's people's ashes being scattered in here.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Especially for these blokes, they're being completely written off, and unfortunately there's no insurance for that sort of thing, so hopefully this will help them a lot.
In November 1985, Surf Fest attracted massive crowds and the world's top surfers to Newcastle Beach. With $100,000 prize money, it was billed as the world's richest surfing event. NBN had cameras in the air and on the beach, covering every aspect of the contest, including one incident that had the world surfing community talking. With the controversy out of the way, it was finals time, and in the women's event, young South African Wendy Botha was up against Australia's Pam Burridge. In the men's final, it came down to South African Sean Thompson against American Tom Curran.